Hello, and welcome to History with Kids. Today, continuing the Alexiad, a story written by the Byzantine princess Anna about her father, Alexios Kominos, emperor of the Eastern Romans. Quotes are adapted from the translation by E.R.A. Suter. We should alert you, this episode includes warfare, setbacks, and psychological manipulation. We're not trying to scare anyone, but this may not be for sensitive listeners. Last episode, Alexios Kominos became emperor of the Eastern Romans with help from his mom, his brother, and many other allies. Alexios' power is still fragile, but he doesn't have much time. The Norman, Robert Guiscard, has been preparing to invade. Now, kids, what do you remember about Alexios and Robert?
They like to use tactics and be sneaky. Alexios, he predicted what the people were going to try to do, so he ambushed them, like with the tent.
Yeah, he did a very sneaky strategy. That's right, involving an empty tent. Do you remember anything else about Abdurrahman, kids?
He didn't pronounce all right. And I also don't.
That's true. Although you're working on it and making great progress, Noodle. At the very end of the last episode, Alexios and his soldiers entered Constantinople, the capital city of the Eastern Romans. One thing I didn't say last week was that many of Alexios' soldiers took advantage of the opportunity to steal stuff from the people living in the city. What do you think that means for what those people think of Alexios? Will they like him for that?
No, it will ruin him financially.
It will ruin Alexios financially? They didn't steal his money.
No, it will, ruin him for people wanting him to be king again.
For emperor, it's true. So what should Alexios do to be more legitimate, more honorable, more respected by his people?
Give him back?
Well, he has a problem, which is he doesn't have a lot of money. So if you had made a bad mistake and somebody lost a bunch of money because of it, and you didn't have the money to make them whole, what would you do?
I might say, I'm sorry that I stole, and it wasn't my command. So you shouldn't be upset about me. You should be upset about my soldiers.
And what do you think, Scoop?
Could it be something like, I'm sorry that my soldiers offer you rough times. I am sorry, and I will tell them that you don't like it.
Yeah, that's not bad. And I think even beyond saying that, Alexios had to show that he really meant it. So here's what the book says he did. For 40 days and nights, Alexios wore a sackcloth. That's a very uncomfortable, rough clothing underneath the royal purple and next to his skin. At night, his bed was the bare ground. So he didn't sleep in a fancy bed at all. And while he bewailed his sins, as was only right, his head was supported on nothing more than a stone. In other words, he didn't have a pillow. He slept on a stone. Thereafter, when the penance was complete, he turned his attention to the administration of the empire with clean hands. What do you think that means?
I think it means he basically punished himself by making him suffer more.
Yeah, it means I'm not guilty anymore. The evil thing that my soldiers had done has now been clean. But Alexios has another problem. Robert Guiscard the Norman is invaded. Alexios is going to have to leave the capital city with his brother to go fight against Robert. Alexios needs someone to run the empire while he's away. His leadership is not yet fully accepted. There's a risk of rebellion against him, especially while he's away. Who do you think he could trust?
His mother?
Correcto vedecto. Let me read from his official proclamation. This was sent all over. When danger is foreseen, there is no safeguard stronger than a mother who is understanding and loves her son. Such, at any rate, has been the experience of myself, your emperor. In the case of my own revered mother, who has taught and guided and sustained me throughout from my earliest years. Now I am preparing with God's help to do battle with Rome's enemies. Fortunately, an impregnable bulwark of good government has been found in the appointment of my revered mother, of all women most honored, as controller of the entire administration. I, your emperor, therefore decree, whatever she decrees in writing shall have permanent validity, as if I myself, your serene emperor, had issued them. Whatever decisions or orders are made by her, written or unwritten, reasonable or unreasonable, shall be regarded as coming from myself. Moreover, with regard to promotions, my saintly mother shall have full power to take whatever action shall seem good to her. The same shall also hold for her ministers, whether their actions seem to be reasonable or ridiculous. What do you think?
If I were a Alexios, I would give this to my mom. She's the one, after all, that got me into this position. If she wasn't there, we would probably be in prison by now.
That's a good point. And he really trusts her. And she's very talented. Now Alexios is someone he trusts running the empire, and he's going to go fight against Robert the Norman. But Alexios' army is weak, and there is not a lot of gold available to hire mercenaries. Robert's invading from the west, so Alexios does the only thing he can think of. He tells the cities on the east side to send him basically most of their soldiers to temporarily boost his army so that he can defeat Robert's invasion. But this is going to weaken the cities in the east, right? Because they're losing a lot of their soldiers.
So what if Roger's actually attacked in the east side?
Roger can't reach the east side very easily, but the Turks are on the east side. So the longer this situation lasts, where those soldiers have been borrowed to fight Robert, the more the Turks could attack and conquer parts of the Eastern Empire. That's a risk that Alexios is going to have to take, though.
Well, with Alexios' Mormon flag, what could possibly go wrong?
I guess so.
I guess many things.
Yeah, that's also true. How else can Alexios prepare for Robert's invasion?
He can prepare by giving his army rest, food, water, strength, courage, other stuff.
Well, I'll tell you a couple more things he does. One thing Alexios does is prepare traps. It says in the book that Alexios invented a new kind of trap that would trap soldiers climbing ladders to go over walls. Here's what it says. Most of the wooden planks, like inside the wall at the top, were to be left unnailed so that if Robert's men climbed up on ladders, as soon as they set foot on the planks, they would crash down to the ground, planks and all.
But how will Alexios get across the wall?
Well, he's already inside the wall. This is to protect the city that Alexios and his men are controlling. But anyway, Alexios had this idea and they're going to try it out. Another thing Alexios does is send letters to Robert's enemies, trying to convince them that now is a great time for them to attack Robert.
Because then they'll join his team.
Exactly. So Alexios basically says, hey, Robert's going to be distracted attacking me. Robert's going to be distracted attacking me. This would be a great time for you to go attack what Robert controls in Italy. Take it over. And by the way, I'll give you some gold if you do so. Does that seem like a good deal?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of his strategy too.
But I thought you said that he didn't have gold.
Well, he doesn't have much gold, but he's promising future gold, which is a lot cheaper to do than giving actual gold. It's a little sneaky. Remember, Alexios is a sneaky guy.
He actually won't give them gold?
We'll see. We'll find out.
Doesn't Alexios at some point get pretty rich?
The Byzantines make a lot of money every year because they control Constantinople, which is the intersection of a lot of trade routes.
Oh, so then next year.
Maybe. Well, we'll see what happens. Robert sets off to attack in all of his boats. His cavalry, his men on horses, go by a separate, longer route over the land. Here's what happened to the boats. Robert was suddenly struck by a tremendous storm. Winds blowing furiously from the mountains lashed up the sea. There was a howling noise as the waves built up. Oars snapped off as the rowers plunged them into the water, and sails were torn to shreds by the blast. Yard arms were crushed and fell to the decks, and now the ships were being swallowed up, crew and all. Everybody was confused and dismayed, not knowing what to do, unable to resist such enemies. Some of the ships sank and their crews drowned with them. Others were dashed against the headlands and broke up. But Robert himself survives, and he's able to land on Roman territory. Do you think he gives up?
No.
Robert does not give up, correct. But he has a problem. He doesn't control any significant cities in this area. He doesn't control the sea routes. A lot of his ships sunk, and he's having trouble getting enough food to keep his army fed. Alexios is keeping him a bit bottled up, not attacking him head on, but not letting him conquer any big areas. Robert tries to take a medium-sized city, but he has trouble doing it. He keeps trying, though. Eventually, the city is going to fall to Robert. So Alexios leads his main army to the area. Now, Alexios is getting two different kinds of advice about what to do. His older advisors are saying, adopt a waiting policy, reduce Robert by skirmishing, that means small battles, and preventing his men from leaving camp to forage or plunder. In other words, the older advisors are saying, Make it hard for Robert to get enough food, but don't fight him head on. The younger advisors, meanwhile, mostly want to fight Robert head on in a big battle. What would you do if you were getting this advice?
Listen to the older advisors.
Why?
It's just safer. I would take the older ones because they've been in the army probably even longer than you have.
So I agree with both of you. Unfortunately for him, Alexios took the advice of the younger advisors. Here's what it says. The emperor decided to launch a sudden night attack on Robert's camp from two sides, and the whole of the Allied army was ordered to surprise him from the rear. They were to go through the salt marshes, a longer route, to catch the enemy unawares. Alexios himself intended to attack from the front when he knew the others were in position. What do you think of that plan?
Good plan? Good plan, bad idea.
So good tactics, bad strategy, maybe?
Yeah.
That same night, Robert Guiscard, the Norman, attacks Alexios. So half of Alexios' army is taking the long way around, while Robert is going straight towards Alexios. So not a good situation, right?
I think that Alexios should run back and try to catch up with his army.
With the other half of his army? You can't. It's night. It's hard to maneuver. You can't even see very well. It says the fighting is fierce. Robert's soldiers charge Alexios personally and try to kill Alexios personally. One of the soldiers swings a sword at Alexios' neck. Here's what the book says Alexios does. Alexios, coolly and not at all alarmed, recognized in a flash what he had to do in that split second. As the blow fell, he leaned over backwards towards his horse's tail. The sword point just grazed his skin, immediately causing a slight cut and knocked the helmet to the ground. The enemy then rode on past him, thinking that Alexios was unseated from his horse. But Alexios drew himself upright and sat firmly in the saddle with all his arms intact. In his right hand, he held his unsheathed sword. He was dusty and bloodstained, bareheaded, with his bright red hair straggling in front of his eyes and annoying him. So if you're Alexios, what do you do now?
Run or fight?
Noodle?
Run.
Alexios runs. He agrees with you. And if you're that medium city that Robert was besieging, now that Alexios has run, his army has taken losses and scattered, and Robert has claimed the field, what do you do if you're that medium city that was having a hard time holding out against Robert?
Maybe you run?
The city can't run.
Evacuate.
They can't evacuate. They were surrounded by Robert's army.
Attack.
They don't have much soldiers inside the city. And Robert has said that he will let you live if you give up.
Give up?
Correct. They give up. The city surrenders to Robert, and now Robert has a base of operations. Robert now starts considering what other larger Roman cities to attack next. And Alexios tries to reform his army out of the survivors of the battle. Alexios' army also uses a lot of mercenaries, people who are paid with money, but Alexios is out of gold.
What happens if the people in the swamp martians ever come back?
Well, those are mostly the mercenaries. When Alexios lost, they say, all right, Alexios, you want us to keep fighting for you? You got to pay us more. So this is a very bad situation for Alexios. He has to think, where could he possibly get gold? He needs gold urgently. Any ideas?
Mom.
Correct. He can get gold from his family, which is rich. Other ideas?
He could go to another city that he owns or a friend, and one of those might give him gold.
You know, you're on the right direction, Noodle.
And he might say, I'll pay you back eventually.
That's a great point. So his family donates their personal wealth, and they go to the churches in cities across the empire and take some of the gold and silver objects and big metal doors, in some cases too, on these churches and basically confiscate them. That means they say the government needs this metal. In addition to hiring mercenaries with all this wealth, Alexios also starts training more Roman soldiers, and he renews his efforts to convince Robert's enemies that now is the perfect time to attack Robert while he's far from home. Ultimately, Alexios succeeds, not on the battlefield, but by convincing Robert's enemies to attack his home base in Italy. In particular, the German emperor attacks Robert's rear. That makes Robert leave Alexios' territory and go back to Italy to take care of the situation. But without Robert there, Alexios is able to bribe the generals with money to get them to switch teams and join Alexios' team. What do you think of this?
Good idea. What worked was bribing people with money. What didn't work was when he went by himself. Not just that, but also charging head on.
That's right. And that's actually very Byzantine. The Eastern Romans, in general, they were very good at using their money and not as good at fighting directly. They tended to do extremely well when they were using sneaky, bribing strategies to pit their enemies against each other. What do you think Robert does, though, when he has to go home and he defeats the people who are attacking Robert, and Robert's now back in firm control of his area in Italy?
Robert tries to attack Alexios again. What if Robert were to try to attack Alexios' mother?
Well, Alexios' mother is in Constantinople, the capital city, which has super duper strong walls. Alexios is in the field running around with his army trying to take back the areas that Robert had conquered. So Alexios is an easier target. Constantinople is a very hard target to conquer, extremely tough. Here's what the book says. Robert sent heralds, messengers, everywhere in his area, proclaiming a general mobilization and a fresh attack on Emperor Alexios. So a host of soldiers, cavalry, and infantry soon gathered from all directions, all finely armed, thinking only of battle. This is a problem for Alexios. He's running low on two things, soldiers and money, but he needs help. And what he realizes is that at this point, the Venetians who live in Venice, who have a lot of ships, are best positioned to help him because they have a strong navy. And if they join his team, their boats are the really only chance he has at defeating Robert's boats and making it hard for Robert to get over to Alexios' area and land soldiers. How could Alexios pay or compensate the Venetians? He's already given them the money he has. He's promised them money that he doesn't have. He needs something more, something really exciting for the Venetians that will make them join his team.
Maybe say, I'll treat you more well than the other people.
And say more. What do you mean by that?
Like, you don't have to pay taxes. Everything will be free in Constantinople for you.
And in fact, yeah, no taxes, and not just Constantinople, but in the entire empire. And Alexios says, anywhere you want an area near the water that you control, you can have it. I think personally, this deal was a bad idea for Alexios because in the long run, is this wise or unwise?
Unwise.
Because who does it make powerful?
The Venetians.
And who does it weaken?
Himself.
And if you're a merchant in Constantinople, you have to pay taxes. But if you're a Venetian merchant also in Constantinople, you don't have to pay taxes. So who can charge a cheaper price for the same thing?
The Venetians.
And so what is this going to do to his own merchants over time?
They're going to get angry and they're going to start leaving.
Yeah, they are going to get angry. They're going to get very angry. Many of them can't leave because they don't really have anywhere to go necessarily, but this is going to create big problems over time. Anyway, in the near term, this does give Alexios what he wants. The Venetians help attack Robert's new fleet of ships, and Robert is not able to invade again. As all this is happening, time is going by. Robert's pretty old, and Robert gets sick, and sadly for Robert, but happily for Alexios, Robert dies. Here's what happens next. The emperor returned to the capital city, Constantinople, with the laurels of victory. He found the empress in the throes of childbirth in the room set apart long ago. At dawn, a baby girl was born to them who resembled her father, so they said, in all respects. I was that baby.
What do you mean?
What do you think?
I was the baby.
I was that baby.
The person who wrote this book was the baby.
Correct.
Wow.
That's right.
But how did she know all of this if she was born after? Well, I suppose she wasn't told stories, I suppose.
Yeah, she heard a lot of stories growing up from all of the people that we've been talking about, at least the ones who are still alive. And she read documents and letters and proclamations that had been issued before she was born.
Wait, how could she do that?
Because they were written down on paper and the paper was still around.
She was allowed to?
Yes, of course. Totally. Why wouldn't she?
Oh, right. She's the emperor's daughter.
Yeah, she's a princess. Totally. So anyway, Anna is now born, who wrote this book. Anna adds, When all the ceremonies usual at the birth of royal children had been faithfully performed, the acclamations, and gifts and honors presented to leaders of the Senate and army, there was, I am told, an unprecedented outburst of joy. Everyone was dancing and singing hymns, especially the close relatives of the empress, who could not contain themselves for delight. Do you think this is like 100% accurate, children?
No.
I agree. I think that she's making her own birth maybe a little more exciting than it was in practice. But it's her boat, so I guess she's allowed. Now, even though Robert has been defeated, there was another enemy, one we haven't talked about for a little while. Do you remember back when Alexios first became emperor, he sent messengers to the towns in the east saying that he needed them to send soldiers to help him defeat Robert?
Yes, now there's a problem in the east.
Correct. Because that decision was going to make it hard for the towns in the east to hold out against the Turks. Remember that?
Yes. No.
Well,
What?
that happened not long ago, Noodle, in this very episode. And now it's playing out. What the Turks often do is not invade as one big army like Robert was, but rather attack one town at a time and take all its stuff, or maybe attack a farm, take the food it's growing, or maybe demand money not to attack a small city. And many of their attacks are not that big, but over time it adds up and it eats away Roman power in the area. Sometimes the Turks do bigger attacks too. In one of those bigger attacks, they even take the Roman city of Antioch, which was a significant city.
Could they take it back?
He's going to try, but it's hard. As Anna writes, the basic problem, here's a quote, is that the Emperor Alexios, fighting two-fisted against barbarians who attacked him on either flank, she means the right and the left, the east and the west. The emperor maneuvered around Byzantium, the center of his circle, as it were. Does that make sense to you?
Kind of. No.
Constantinople, Byzantium, is the center of his empire. And he has to either be fighting on the left or the right all the time against Robert on the left, the Turks on the right. He's just always dealing with one or both at the same time.
Robert's dead, though.
Now Robert is dead. That doesn't mean that the West is going to be peaceful forever. Fortunately, Alexios is a very crafty, clever leader and a good soldier. He is able to win some battles in the coming years. He's very good at pitting his enemies against each other. He also sometimes even helps his own enemies if they're the weaker enemy. He'll prop up, he'll help the weaker enemy so that the stronger enemy doesn't get too strong. With those kind of tactics, Alexios is able to keep swimming. Now we'll stop our story here for today. Next time we'll finish the story of the Alexiad with the First Crusade. Before we go, kids, what do you think you'll remember from today?
I think that I'll remember that the Venetians defeated Robert, and that the Turks are biting, and that a baby was born. Huh. I'll probably remember that Roger is dead.
Would you have wanted to be part of the story?
No.
If you could be any person in the story, who would you want to be?
Maybe the Venetians? Or maybe Alexios? I don't know. I know.
Who?
The mom. The mom, because she gets to run the whole empire.
Next time, we'll continue the story, and I'm looking forward to covering the end of the Alexiad together with you. Have a good one.